So I've been talking about color analysis for over 2 years on this channel. It was actually only a few months after I started this channel that I initially covered the topic, and then I went pretty in depth with it over the years. But the truth is, I've actually never gotten my colors professionally typed before. So while I was traveling in Korea last month and earlier this month, I finally decided to get my colors analyzed by a professional. I actually visited a couple of different color analysts just so I can compare the different results. And starting with this video, I'm creating a mini series on getting my color analysis done by different professionals and sharing all of my learnings with you. And honestly, the results were somewhat unexpected. Like, it was a bit shocking as somebody who talks about colors a lot and who thinks that she knows her stuff pretty well. So if you want to know more about my results and my learnings, then make sure to stay tuned and make sure to subscribe if you want to follow the whole series. So the first place that I decided to visit is called Monque Color Lab, MONQUE Color Lab. And I found this place through this YouTube channel that I follow. I referenced a lot of their content back when I was creating the deep versus dark seasons video because they use a 22 season system. So this definitely sparked my interest. I mean, I feel like I'm already quite familiar with the 12 season system, and I've talked about it in the past about how I'm likely a deep autumn in the 12 season system. So I wanted to see if the results would end up being any different if I were to be analyzed under a more segregated system. And the big reason for that is because I consider myself as somebody who is not too sensitive to the temperature of colors. So I can wear both warm and cool colors as long as they're not too extreme on either side. And a lot of you have been commenting about how you think that cool colors actually look better on me. So I kind of wanted to see how true this was. So how this whole process started was, as soon as I showed up at the appointment, they made me fill out a short survey about my style preferences, about the colors that I wear often versus colors I tend to avoid for both clothes and for makeup, any work-related restrictions that I might have for my attire, and any particular areas about my appearance that I want to correct, etc. I also ended up taking a body type analysis within the same session, so they made me fill out a short survey about that. But I'm actually planning on creating a whole separate video for the body typing portion of the appointment, so make sure to keep an eye out for that as well. So after filling out the survey and before we jumped right into the draping session, I got a chance to sit down with the consultant. She measured my skin tone with a measuring device on both of my cheeks, and we talked a little bit about the results. We talked about my hair and my eye colors, and we also talked a bit about my facial proportions and my facial features. And here's where the first surprise came. So with measuring my skin tone with a measuring device, it spit out values for how light my skin tone is and also how much redness and how much yellowness is showing up in my skin tone. And I'll pop the chart on the screen just so you can see what the values were. And in brackets, it showed the average range for East Asians. And my results ended up showing quite a bit of both redness and yellowness. Like, both values were above average for me. The values also showed that I'm darker than the average, but that was expected. I mean, I just went to visit Mexico at the end of last year, so I'm a little bit more tan than usual, and I am generally darker than most East Asians, so that wasn't a big surprise for me. But the big surprise was the value for redness, because in my olive skin tone video before, I mentioned that olive skin results from a lack of redness in your skin. And I have olive skin. I mean, I've been told I have olive skin. So it was just surprising to see such a high number for red. And the consultant actually didn't think that I have olive skin at all. She assessed my skin tone as neutral. And I just wondered if it's because I'm more tan than usual. You know, I've mentioned before that I feel like my skin tone looks more neutral during the summertime. And this is just my own theory, and there's no science to back this theory up or anything like that. But usually during winter times, my skin does look pretty olive, so I don't know, it was just a really confusing part for me. And then based on what we talked about for proportions and features, she quickly went through some hairstyle recommendations for me. So between bangs and no bangs, she recommended no bangs, which I absolutely agree. And for hair length, she recommended long or medium over short or extra short, which I also agree. And between straight and wavy hair, she suggested wavy hair for me, but I personally prefer straight hair. So there was a point of disagreement there, but for the most part, I agreed with her recommendations. So that was everything we went through prior to the draping session. And it was a really fun way to just talk about my skin tone and my hair color and my eye color. She apparently sees a lot of depth in my hair, which I agree. And there's a slight redness, which I also agree, a little bit of softness in my eyes. All of these are factors that I've talked about in my previous videos before. So like I said, some parts I was kind of surprised about, but overall I thought this was a great intro to just seeing myself through someone else's eyes. And then we finally sat down for the draping session, and I thought that we would start with looking at the temperature of colors first, but she actually started with looking at the value first. So we draped a bunch of achromatic colors from light to dark. And in this section, she specifically focused on addressing my concern that I had mentioned in the written survey in the beginning. So I wrote down that my pointy chin is an area that makes me feel self-conscious sometimes because my face can look longer from it. So we went through draping light to dark colors in sequence, and she mentioned that light colors make my face look a little bit flat, and that ends up accentuating the facial length a little bit more, whereas medium to dark colors have the opposite effect because they define the outline of my face, so they make my face look more proportionate in terms of length. She also mentioned how dark colors tend to bring more definition to my hair and my eyes, and this is something that I've also talked about in my previous videos, that low value colors work the best for me. But the difference was that I've always felt like medium valued grays bring out more shadows in my face, and they're worse than white colors because at least white creates a higher level of contrast against my skin. But she actually mentioned that high value colors are worse for me. And then after that is when we compared the temperature of colors. So she flipped between warm and cool colors in various hues to compare the difference. And this was the area that I was the most curious about. And this is another area of surprise for me because I thought that I wouldn't be able to see such a big difference, but the difference ended up being a lot more noticeable than I had assumed. So I found the difference to be the most noticeable in my cheeks area, like under my eyes and beside my nose. So cooler colors made me look paler, and I could definitely see more pink and bluish colors, almost purple in my cheeks, and the lips also became more purple. She also checked for varying levels of warmth and coolness to see how warm or how cool of colors I can actually pull off. So she went through 6 different levels of warm colors from slightly warm to very warm, and we repeated the process for cool colors. So the verdict was that I can wear up to level 3 warmth, so that's like medium warm, and possibly level 4, but beyond that, too much warmth just makes my skin look too yellow. And with cool colors, she only suggested level 1 for coolness, so just ever so slightly cool. Now, something that I caught later looking back at the footage, and this was a process she went through very quickly during the consultation, so I didn't notice it then. But I realized later that the level 1 warm color that she used was actually a very cool color, like it's a very bluish pink. So if we do a side-by-side comparison between the level 1 warm color versus a level 1 cool color, the supposed warm color actually looks cooler and the cool color looks warmer and also slightly brighter. So I'm not sure if this was just a mistake or if they do this on purpose just to show a more of a dramatic difference. It's just something I noticed while I was reviewing the footage. The next step was to compare clear versus soft colors. So soft colors are made by adding gray to colors. So this was a process to check if the presence of gray is better or worse for me. And this was another area of surprise. I mean, there's so many surprises, but as I've mentioned many times before, I thought that my dominant traits are first deep, so low value, and then soft. So I assumed that colors that contain gray would be better than bright colors for me, but when we were comparing clear versus soft colors, the verdict was quite obvious that clear colors looked better on me. So this was such a huge area of confusion because I usually opt for soft colors over bright colors in both my clothing and my makeup, and I've never really felt like bright colors worked all that well for me. But with the draping, I could definitely see the difference, and I agreed that brighter colors looked better on me. So this is something I actually understood why after I've had my second session with another analyst. So I'm gonna explain this a little bit further in my next video, but for now, this is what I've been assessed with. Clear colors are better than soft colors for me, but she did mention that I could do like a drop of gray, just not more than that. Now, the next characteristic we checked for was Chroma. And to explain this concept a little bit better, I'm going to share with you the PCCS color chart. So PCCS stands for Practical Color Coordination System, and it's a Japanese color system that's used for color analysis. And the system uses saturation or chroma and lightness or value to segregate all of the colors into 12 different tones. So there's 12 tones for warm colors and 12 tones for cool, so that makes up 24 in total. Now this is how the chart works. If you add white to vivid colors, it creates bright, light, and pale tones depending on how much white is added. If you add black to the vivid colors, we can create deep, dark, and dark grayish tone, again, depending on how much black is added. And when we add gray to vivid colors, it creates the middle 5 groups, depending on the varying levels of gray from light to dark. So on this chart, chroma is on the horizontal axis. So whether it's more white or black or gray that's added to a color, the chroma goes down regardless. But the color wheels on the outer edge of this chart only contain white or black, whereas the color wheels in the intersection contain both white and black because gray is a combination of white and black. So in the previous steps of checking clarity, I mentioned that soft colors are colors that contain gray. So when we were comparing clear versus soft colors, that meant we were looking at whether the color wheels on the outer edge of the chart is a better fit or the color wheels in the inner circle is a better fit for me. Now, since we decided that clear colors are a better fit in the previous step, this step now of comparing chroma, we were looking at different tones from the outer edge of the chart only. So the draping went from light, then bright, then vivid, then deep, then dark grayish. I'll show that to you again. It went from light, bright, vivid, deep, dark, and dark grayish. So she went through the draping pretty quickly the first time, and then when it came time for the second round of draping, we went through it a little bit slower, and she ruled out light and bright first because those were the colors that made me look the most washed out. And then she ruled out the darkest color next, so the dark grayish tone. She said that there were more shadows created in my face, but I personally didn't really think it was that bad. I actually thought the vivid was worse on me, but she said that it's the second best. So my priority, in my opinion, from best to worst was dark, deep, dark grayish, and then vivid. And we had already ruled out light and bright before, but her priority for me was deep, vivid, dark, then dark grayish. So based on all of these draping results, she picked out my top 3 color seasons, which were deep autumn first, and then vivid spring second, and third was deep winter. So what do you guys think? Do you guys agree or disagree with the verdict? Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. So after the draping session came the makeup pouch check next. So prior to the appointment, the instruction was to bring my makeup pouch with all of my usual items inside it. So we went through all of the makeup products to see if the colors that I normally use are a good fit for my color season. And apparently they are. I was told that 90% of my products are meant for deep autumn, so that's really good news. And then she filled out the rest of the card that we used at the beginning with the skin tone and the hair and eye colors and all that. So she picked out some suitable hair colors for me based on my color season. And then we reviewed the characteristics of colors in more detail again. So with temperature, we decided that I'm suited for medium warm to slightly cool. With value, we decided that I'm suited for medium to low value. And then with clarity, I'm better suited for clear than soft colors. And the range is also quite small. And with chroma, I'm suited for high to low chroma, but low only on the darker side. She also rated all of these characteristics of colors from the most to least important. And I always thought that value was the most important characteristic for me, but apparently chroma is, and then it's clarity, and then it's temperature, and value came in last. So that was another surprise for me. She also jotted down all of the suitable jewelry types, not only in colors, but also in size, the shape, the gloss level, and we also looked at my contrast level as well as patterns. So this was something that we went over after determining the season. We quickly looked at all of these components like jewelry colors, the contrast level that's suitable for me, as well as the different pattern sizes and types. And then on the flip side, she also provided some more information around makeup. So for my makeup focal point, she said that I should go for either cheeks or lips instead of eyes, which I disagree because I usually wear the most eye makeup and I stay pretty neutral with my cheeks and my lips. And then she also picked out some eyeshadow, blush, and lip colors for me. There was also some information provided about eyebrow color and shape. And the color I obviously understood, they should be warm and dark, but I didn't quite understand where the eyebrow shape came from. Maybe it was just based on the shape of my eyes, but there wasn't really enough information provided as to why. And then with the last page, they showed the PCCS chart again, and they named my first and second best color seasons as well as my worst season. So she actually went over all of these details with me with examples in a PowerPoint presentation format, but I wasn't allowed to film the presentation because of copyright issues. So I'm just sharing these cards with you instead. And then we finally finished the session with a makeover, and that was about 45 minutes alone. So that was everything. Overall, it was a super jam-packed session. I think it was about 2 to 2.5 hours altogether, including the makeup session at the end, but this was excluding the body type analysis. So that was a lot of information she shared with me in this session, and some areas I was definitely confused about, and I'm not gonna lie, I didn't agree with everything she said, especially the part about vivid spring being my second best season after deep autumn. Like, I've never thought that vivid colors are my best colors, so I was really confused about that. But I am filming this after I've had my second session with a different analyst, and some of those areas that I was unsure about and the question marks I've had in my head were definitely answered in my later session. So I'll explain more about that in my next video. So overall, I didn't agree with everything that she told me, but given the amount of time, the effort, all of the information that she shared with me throughout the session, I thought made it worth its price. And it was definitely a chance for me to just learn more about myself and understand how other people might see me. Like I said, I also took the body type analysis in the same session. So everything together just made it that much more worthwhile for me. And again, I'm creating a whole separate video for the body type analysis, so stay tuned for that. I hope you found the video helpful, and I'll see you in my next video. Until then, stay unique and stay gorgeous.